I hope everyone has enjoyed the meal so far. I didn't do all the cooking, so I can't take any credit. I just wanted to make a few, and I promise you they will be brief remarks. And I do have to apologize because I know some of you have seen some of the PowerPoint slides that I'm going to use, but they are, I will say they are very useful for expository delivery of the information that I wanted to impart. So, of course, as I mentioned this morning, and many of you were not present for the symposium this morning, but I mentioned that we have two purposes in gathering. One is to review the science of predictability of climate and understand where our enterprise is today and where it can go in the future. But our second mission for the 2 days has been to honor our colleague, Dr. Shukla. And you'll notice that it just says Shukla. So, and you will see that all the slides say Shukla. He does have another name, but nobody uses it. I mean, maybe the IRS uses it, I suppose. But even his wife calls him Shukla. So I think it's perfectly normal for all of us to refer to Dr. Professor Shukla as Shukla. So Shukla, this is about you. Of course, as many of you have seen in the program that accompanied the symposium today, we have a little biography in there of Shukla, and of course it points out that he got his start in a small village in India called Mirda, which is in Balia, which is in Uttar Pradesh, India. These are some pictures that were taken in the village, not necessarily at the time that Shukla was young, but I am told that banyan tree with the cows sitting under it is in fact the elementary school where, that's not true, is it? Is it? Okay, well maybe it is true. So that's the apocryphal story is that is in fact the elementary school where Shukla got started in the 1950s. This is a picture of Shukla with his mother from the time, not at the same time as elementary school, but not too long after that. He got his degrees of substance, first a PhD in 1971 from BHU, the Banaras Hindu University, and that was in geophysics. And then, as you may have read in the biography, he went to a meeting, met Jewel Charney, and then went to MIT to work in climate and eventually earned his science doctorate in 1976 at MIT. Since then, as we have been discussing all day at the symposium, it's been 40 years of learning on his part as well as teaching and mentoring in climate dynamics. Achievements, they've already been mentioned a few times today, but just as a reminder to give you what we call the metrics. And I won't tell you his H-index because it's embarrassing to a lot of us about what his H-index is, but he's the author of a great many hundreds of scholarly papers as well as contributions to book chapters. He's also been PhD thesis advisor to actually more than 20 students at various universities. And he has been, as was mentioned today, the TOGA panel and other panels, he was the chair or a member of many national and international panels. What I think has been brought out most during the day today that many people mention, Shukla has been the progenitor of a number of institutions. The one I'm most familiar with, COLA, and the Center for Ocean, Land, Atmosphere Studies, and also the Institute of Global Environment and Society. That's here in the United States. He also was one of the principal push people behind the creation of the National Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasting, not to be confused with the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, which is in New Delhi, and also helped get the program in physics of weather and climate at the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, Italy, as well as founding the Climate Dynamics PhD program at George Mason University, and most recently founding a college for rural women in his village back in India that's called the Gandhi College. We have a, yes. I have a picture of that in a minute, but this is the climate dynamics faculty in a younger moment. And I don't know if we had never noticed this before, but when I trotted this picture out, I noticed that there was a sartorial gradient from left to right. So somehow about half the people got the message that it was a tie and jacket affair, and the other half didn't get that message. So anyway, that's and you know, this is not the uniform we wear at COLA. So just so you know, it's atypical. This is Shukla meeting with the former Prime Minister of India to discuss how to accelerate progress in monsoon prediction and get a better understanding of something that's of extreme importance on the climate side to the government of India, obviously, as well as the people and residents and businesses in India. I mentioned Gandhi College. This is a picture of the entryway to the college on the right. And Shukla was actually written up in the New York Times for his work to try to bring education to rural India. He's been honored a number of times by a number of different groups. This is from the ceremony, the inaugural ceremony, of the very first bestowal of the Walker Gold Medal by the India Meteorological Department. He also was honored, he received the highest award from the American Meteorological Society, which is the Rossby Research Medal. This was Susan Avery, who was president of the AMS at that time, had the honor of giving him the honor. At the award ceremony, it was wonderful to get together with old friends. And here's a picture of Shukla with two of his mentors, Suki Manabe and Ed Lorenz. He also was honored by the World Meteorological Organization with their highest award, which is the International Meteorological Organization Prize. This is a picture of Shukla receiving the award from Alexander Bedritsky, who at that time was president of the WMO. And there were a number of people who were present for that event, including Vice Admiral Lattenbacher, who at that time was the head of NOAA. Let's see, we also have Ralph Cicerone, who was head of the National Academy of Sciences. Of course, I mentioned Dr. Buditsky. We also had Michel Jarreau, who was head of WMO at that time. We also had the president of George Mason University was present at that time, Alan Merton. And Ronan Sen, who was ambassador to the United States from India. We're all present for that event. More recently, Shukla was made a fellow of the American Geophysical Union, and this is Tim Killeen, who was at that time president of the AGU, bestowing that award. And then most recently, he received one of the highest civilian honors that the government of India bestows. This is called the Padma Shri Award. And in this case, it was presented by the President of India, Mrs. Patil. And it was done at this place, which, you know, we have a White House in the United States, which is meant to be just sort of a little cottage with some columns out front. This place where the President of India lives is a little bit more spectacular. I haven't been, but I've seen the pictures and your jaw kind of drops when you see it. And I'd just like to quickly share a few comments that we've received from people who could not be here with us, who tried to let me know that they really wanted to join us. This is from Franco Molteni, who is in charge of ensemble prediction at the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasts. Dear Shukla, I want to thank you for all you've done for our scientific community throughout your career, outstanding scientist at a personal level, aggregate a fantastic group of talented scientists. That's the main reason why I wanted to quote this, of course, because he's shown a little light on those of us who are also there. And he has a recollection about reading Shukla's papers and how they inspired his scientific work. He also expresses his appreciation for friendship. And even though they differed have different opinions on specific issues, and he didn't elaborate on that, so I don't know what he was referring to. I also heard from Roberto Mechoso at UCLA, who sent his warmest regards, said he was very sad he couldn't be here because he's in Spain at the moment. And he had this funny story, I don't know how funny it is, but first time he met Shukla, it was a seminar at GFDL when Roberto was a student there, and he pointed out that the The room had no windows, and this is the GFDL seminar room, all of us remember that room. My recollection is that it didn't have any windows, and it also had this kind of pall of cigar smoke, which was Joe Smag, who would sit up at the very front, right next to the viewgraph projector, where you would write with pens on your transparencies. And Joe would kind of blow cigar smoke at you to see if you could take it. And he did that for the defenses as well. So when we had to defend our theses, we had that. Anyway, so Roberto wasn't remembering that, but he remembered the electricity went out, and everybody had to go out in the front where there was actually some light coming in through the windows. And he said Shukla gave his talk by just writing on big sheets of paper. I don't know if you remember that, Shukla, but I wasn't there, so I don't know. But it certainly was a funny story from Roberto. Joe Trivia sent a very long and very warm message. Joe was actually going to be here, was on our program, but he had difficulties managing the travel. He was just in Europe. And so he sent a very warm message, which I shared with Shukla earlier. And I just wanted to quote from here where he talks about, our discipline has been fortunate that you have been and continue to be willing and able to fill the void left by the retirements of a group of our leaders from the earlier generation. Taro Matsuno also would have been here had he been able to travel, and he sent his congratulations for the symposium. He said he actually was throwing a shout out to all the people on the program, saying he was really impressed, and he looked at the program and he's really sorry he couldn't be here because he really would have liked to have met all the people who are here. And as I mentioned during the symposium today, we're very privileged to have some of the top people in climate dynamics research in the world who have been willing to share their time and their thoughts and their wisdom with us today and tomorrow. This is a long letter I'm not going to read, but this is a letter of congratulations from the provost of George Mason University, David Wu, who is also was supposed to be here, but unfortunately he was dragged out to Manassas, Virginia, for a ceremony that involved the governor of Virginia. And so Shukla, the governor, had to kind of think which way he was going to go with that. So he sent his regrets. And I really like the one sentence from his letter where he said, congratulating you for not only being one of the most distinguished scientists at Mason, but also one of the most distinguished scientists in the world in your field. By the way, this is David Wu is our provost, has only been the head of our university for a short while. He replaced Dr. Peter Stearns, who is here with us tonight, who was previously provost of the university. And we're very honored to have you here, Dr. Stearns. Thank you very much. So that's the end of my remarks. I just wanted to do a quick review of the biography and just extend some thanks to many people who came to share these 2 days with us, share their thoughts and wisdom, as I mentioned, and also to share our time honoring our colleague, our benefactor, and in, I think, everybody's case in the room, our friend, Dr. Shukla. Now, that's the totality of the prepared program for this evening, and I'm sure everybody's going, boy, is that good. But I know that there are a few people who are itching to say something on a little bit more personal level, or maybe a joke, or maybe there were 3 or 4 more view graphs that you didn't get to go through today during your talk, and you just wanted to let us know what's going on. So the floor is open. We'll look for you to raise your hand if you would like to say something. We'll love to hear what you have to say. If it's about Shukla, that's a bonus. But of course, anything that's on your mind is welcome. So, any takers? We have one.
Hi, I'm Adarsh Deepak. I'm the president of Science and Technology Corporation. I had a non-profit organization called Institute for Atmospheric and Remote Sensing. And one day, Shukla Walks told me that he'd like to start an organization called COLA. And this is, I'm talking about 20 years ago. And so we talked. He was going to join bring it aboard iForce, but he didn't know exactly how to start a new organization. So he said, do you have an auditor? I said, sure. He said, can I borrow him for... So I told him, yes, go ahead. And so he started because he didn't know what overhead was and all that. So he learned all those business things. So we taught him. So that's my association with Cola. And so, in fact, I helped start Cola. But the reason I'm wanting to tell you is, but he told me one thing. Once he decided to start separately, he said, but you cannot hire Jim Kintel. So Jim, this is an honor for you too. And that's, I remember very clearly and never forgotten. I said, what a dedicated person who really made sure the name by you, you can't hire you. Well, that's a wonderful thing you've done. I'm glad to be associated with Wordsworth. William Wordsworth once said, when I see a beautiful girl, I just want to be related to her. I don't want to touch her or anything. And this, so I'm related to you.
Hey, Shukla, now you're a beautiful girl.
It's not very much for me to add after the very nice words of Jim Kinter, but I have to say a couple of words to you, Shukla, as a good friend. And I think we all agree what has been said during this first day of the symposium of the extraordinary achievement you have done, of the courage you have shown to really leave the safety atmosphere of a university to start to set up a new institute on your own and take all the risk. I think this is a great achievement, and I think that what we heard by the Cherishik in the presentation, I think we all agree with that. And it is, I cannot recall actually when we met, but it must be something of a quarter of a century ago, or something like that. And you went to the European Center several times. You came to Hamburg a couple of times. You came to Uppsala, where we saw my old summer house and other places. And of course, I have been to Kola many, many times. And we have had the most wonderful exchange on science and also on personal matters. And of course, I appreciated very much the support you gave me when I had my loss of my wife. And of course, we all have had our not only happy experiences, but it's true for both of us. So to have passion for science, I don't know exactly, Shukla, why you become interested in meteorology. We haven't talked about that, but I can construct something which is, was actually my own reason that I become interested in meteorology. And that was not due to, in the first hand, to the weather, but to astronomy, because I was fascinated by the fact that it was possible to predict a solar eclipse a very long time in advance. And then I said to my mother and to my sister that why couldn't we predict the weather? In fact, the forecast for the Swedish Weather Service were completely useless. Maybe at most it's a half a day in advance or so you can use it. So I started to become interested in it, and I said there must be a way around it. And I wouldn't be surprised, Shukla, if you have had some similar experience. Anyhow, I think that to try to summarize, and I think that there's no question that Kola has been a great success, and you are the leader of it, and of course also mention your staff and your family who has given you all the support. And I have always been in favor of this type of arrangement, what we call the non-profit organization, because I have had the opportunity to work with you in Colas as a non-profit organization, and also with a few others. And I have come to the conclusion that for science, this is the best of all arrangements, because you have a lot of freedom, but of course you also have a lot of responsibility. And of course you deliver also something really value for money, which I think the the weather service that NASA and others who have supported COLA should recognize. Thank you very much, Shukla, for great friendship and great achievement.
Thank you, Leonard.
I think I just want to let you know how I met Shukla. It was not in the best of the circumstances, because I met Shukla in 1980 over Charney's beautiful apartment in Boston. But the reason I think now, Shukla, when I think after almost 40 years, Charney invited me to have dinner, and I met Shukla there. Shukla was here at Goddard. And then Charney asked me to come to Goddard. I was Charney's student, to work with Shukla. And also I have to thank Milt Halen, because he was really the person who made that possible. But I think now, almost 40 years later, I think Charney knew his health was deteriorating. So he wanted me to come to work with Shukla. And eventually he died, as you recall, in 1981. So I was the last student of Charney, but I had a great pleasure to have been the first student of Shukla in his magnificent career. I'm very proud to have been your first student. After that, Shukla's career, my career, they've been in many places interacting, and I'm very grateful what Shukla did for me, what Shukla did for Brazil. It's not, it's not on Jim's list, Brazil, but I think it should be fair to say that Shukla helped setting up more than one research center in Brazil, the Weather Forecasting Center, which is well known today, CPTEC, but also a more recent one, the Center for Earth System Science. So Shukla, I think not only myself, but all of us in Brazil owe you a lot, and I thank you very much.
Piers Sellers, colleague and valet of Shukla and Carlos Snowberry. So I met Carlos and Shukla about the same time because Shukla recruited us, immigrant labor, to deal with the land surface problem in his model. And Shukla was excited about this whole business of deforestation in Amazonia. He said, it's a crime. It's an environmental disgrace. We must go down there and see it. And Carlos said, sure, we'll fix that up. So off we all went to Amazonia. And sooner or later, we found ourselves in this jungle. And we're wandering along, we're sloshing through mud, we're snakes running around, spiders jumping on us, and we're being bitten. And after an afternoon, that Shukla comes out and says, well, we ought to rethink our position about this deforestation. But in any case, Carlos and I turned the whole place into a golf course in the model, so we got our revenge. It was good. So this went on for a while, and Carlos and me and Shukla were all sharing digs in Kola. And then I noticed that Shukla was a computer kind of guy, theoretician. And I was working field experiments. I said, Shukla, you've got to come out and see the real world. He says, I don't think I'd like it. And I said, no, you've got to do it. So he comes out to Kansas, where we're doing a big, large-scale field experiment, Fife, the first one. And I said, Shukla, this is the way we do it. You get up at 3 in the morning. He said, really? Said, we go out to the airplane and T-130 and we take off and we take data and then we look at the data and come down and have breakfast. He says, okay, very brave, shows up. We come out to this old beat up aircraft and he says, is this thing safe? And I said, I don't know, NASA gets all this aircraft from DOD, excess. Usually they've been crashed at least once, But he got on the airplane. And off we go, it's night. We go up over the Konza Prairie, 26,000 feet, and we're droning along. And Shukla starts looking out the window, sun's coming up, sees this beautiful prairie. He looks at the scanners. We have these scanners on the plane that look like satellite scanners. And he sees the lines coming up of all the data and how different it is, how everything's very varied. There's valleys and there's hot spots and cold spots and stuff like that. And he looks at me and he says, I wish I hadn't seen that. Because our model was pretty simple. But I give him props for showing up, looking at real data, and then going back to the office. It was the right thing to do. So Shukla, I want to thank you for everything you've done for the field and done for people like me and Carlos. It's been a long and very happy road, and I look forward to doing more with you. Good luck.
Okay. Anyway, before I say anything, I want to confess I'm a little nervous talking to all these PhDs. And so few years ago, I attended one of your meetings, and I don't remember what you talked. It went all over my head, though I'm a surgeon. But anyway, Shukla is my neighbor. And one thing I want to tell you, this cola, which was started, you heard first speaker say, and the accountant came and told him how much it will cost, what he's taking this endeavor. And he had to employ all these people who were there with him. It's a lot of money. So we went to the bank, and they all refused, kind of thing. Hey, Shukulji, we can't just give you a loan or line of credit, whatever you like. You're starting this, nobody knows what you're doing. You're coming from University of Maryland. So Shukulji just bought a house in our neighborhood. I was very impressed when he signed the personal guarantee and put his house on the block to start this cola. So I thank God it worked out. Otherwise, Anne will be back to Beltsville in that apartment. Thank you, Shukla.
Thank you. You're not the only one who's happy it worked out.
First of all, I'd like to begin by asking Shukla, do you mind if I call you Jagdish? You know, it's now permitted because it says Jay Shukla. You know, for others here, Indian names can be quite puzzling because depending on the part of the country you're in, the second name is actually your given name, not where he comes from. So that's why I'm saying, Jagdish, thank you for getting me invited here. It's a pleasure to be here. And I just want to, you know, I'm not a scientist, I'm only an economist. And I just want to say a few things about how I got to know him. And I think all the wonderful things he did afterwards for India. You know, I first met him when Dr. Manmohan Singh, you saw them in a picture together, first came to the United States. And there was a sensible idea that the Prime Minister should meet with distinguished American scientists of Indian origin. So we got a whole lot of people who had made names for themselves in this country, and they met with the Prime Minister. And a little bit later, we were engaged in trying to work out what are the things that India and the United States could do, which would be in the form of bilateral cooperation. Now, at that time, President Bush was then the president. The nuclear deal was a big issue. But I think on the American side, well, and that went quite well, on the American side, there was also this concern that the US ought to be collaborating with India in areas that would resonate with ordinary people. I mean, after all, if you go back to the 1960s, one of the most productive collaborations related to the Green Revolution. The hybrid seeds coming in, the Rockefeller Foundation funded stuff coming in from Mexico, making a huge difference to the Green Revolution. So we thought that this time around, promoting and supporting some research collaboratively with US institutions in the whole area of monsoon forecasting would go down extremely well. And Jagdish Shukla was very instrumental and helpful in guiding us in how do we go about it, and what are the institutions that we should be approaching. I used to be then co-chair on the Indian side of an Indo-US economic cooperation effort. So having him, being able to get his advice on how to pose the issue was actually quite important. Because if we simply made a vague sort of remark, it wouldn't have got anywhere. My impression is that that went very well. At least he came frequently. He became then, amongst the 50 organizations that you headed, one of them was the advisory panel for the Ministry of Earth Sciences. And whenever I met him, he used to say, well, you know, things are not going as well as they should because people resist change, but they're going well. He's quite an optimist, really. And my own impression is that they went quite well. So this time, when I was invited to come here, I thought I better check with the guys at home that in case I get a chance to say anything, what would they like me to say? So they gave me a little note full of praise of Jagdish, his background, his knowledge, his inspirational capabilities, all that kind of stuff. But they also added that as a result of the work we've been doing, we now have got to a position where our weather forecasting is pretty much up to world class. So now this is the real contribution of Jagdish Shukla. He's, after all, as an academic, quite precise and quite willing to tell you where you're strong and where you're not. So I asked him over the reception that, is this true? And he said, well, you know, for 5-day forecasting, I think they're pretty much, he said, 95% of world standard. So I feel that's really good enough. But he said for seasonal forecasting, the whole monsoon season, they're probably still only about 30 or 35%. So Jagdish, I'm going to report this back to them, saying there's no point in fooling me, because I don't know. But hopefully when you celebrate your 80th birthday, or maybe even before that, somebody should be able to get up and say, we've got there on the long-range forecasting also. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Yes. Back in 2007, Shukla had, after having invited me to go to India, to see India for many times, he said, this is the time you have to come to India this year if you're going to come to India. So Susie, my wife, and I agreed to come. We went on a delegation, well, it was just really a tour group with Peter Webster and Tim Palmer and Ken Mooney. And Shukla was like a mother hen. He took care of us. He arranged all the travel itineraries. We got to see the Taj Mahal and many other great places. And we went to Varanasi and we're out in the boat in the Ganges. And in the course of the visit, Shukla indicated, well, if we really wanted to, we could go to his village. And of course, we said we do want to come to the village. And we had a 6-hour drive on a very rough roads and got there and had a greeting that I will never forget in terms of rides on elephants. Our feet were washed. We had, well, it was all kinds of things. And the first thing we did was we went to Gandhi College, the college for girls that Shukla had founded. And I'm going to turn it over to Susie at this point and ask.
Well, I had never planned to go to India, and we went with Shukla that once, and I had certainly never planned to go back, and now we've been going back every year since then. And Jim alluded to Gandhi College, but I think a few of you have had the pleasure of understanding what that really means in that village for the girls in that village and nearby. And I wish that I had brought some of my slides of the students at the college when Shukla appears. I mean, it is almost like a god descending to earth, and they are swamping him to touch his feet as a token of respect. But it isn't just in a mythological way. They understand that he's a real person and that he came from there. And if he can rise to this level, they even though they are women, can have the hope of doing this. And I have to say, I will tell just a little story of what this college means to the girls. It is not always about academic achievement, and I don't think that every girl who attends there has in her mind a vision of a career of any sort. But it is one place in this somewhat tightly controlled environment of villages in northern India where the girls are free of some of the duties of the household and some of the restrictions, and where they can be together with their friends and with boys. There are a small number of boys at the college. And last time I was there was a holiday. Well, there are many holidays, but this was going to be a rather long holiday. And I said to some of the girls, "Oh, you must be so happy. You're having time off school." And they said, "Oh, no, ma'am. We love coming to school. When we're at home, we have to stay in and we have to work, and we can't go out of the house and we can't see our friends." Now, I don't think this is true for all girls, of course, but there's a social component to this education that I think is very hard to understand. And so I really, I've been an educator all my life, and so I have to, thank Shukla for what he's done there. But I also have to say is that we're talking about Shukla as being an extraordinary man, and he is. But I have had the pleasure of knowing other members of Shukla's family. It's an extraordinary family, and so I've seen the love and support they have for each other, and I know that's what Shukla comes from, and so I can appreciate his journey.
In the early 70s, on the 14th floor of the Green Building at MIT, where Charney had his office, there were a number of us, George Philander, myself, Mark Kane, who were there when 3 new graduate students came. That was Inez Fung, Antonio Mora, and Jay Shukla. Shukla was new to the United States. He had just come from India. And I'm so sorry, one of the graduate students of Charney is not here, Arthur Bass. It was Arthur Bass who took it upon himself to teach Shukla the mores of this new country that he had just landed in. So he showed him all around MIT, he showed him around Cambridge, he told him what to do and what not to do, and then he sat him down and decided to tell him the worst words in the English language. So he went through the standard words, and then he said, and the very worst word to be used only on special occasions is toothbrush. So I'm sure I speak from the heart and all the other people on the 14th floor when I say, toothbrush you.
Well, Mark Kane, we were on the 14th floor together. We were all graduate students together, and 40-odd years later, we're still together in great numbers. I actually came the year after Shukla and Inez and so on, but it didn't make any difference. And I would start by saying that Shukla is, although I've known him all this time and we're in a sense like family after all this time, he's still the most astonishing person I know, and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how he got to be Shukla. It's beyond my comprehension how anyone can have that level of optimism and audacity and a kind of lifelong vision to really change the world that goes well beyond climate science. And there are a few clues maybe about how he got that way. I'm not sure how relevant they are, but then I've never figured it out. One comes again from Arthur Bass, who was the person who introduced him to American mores. And I can't remember whether Arthur or Shukla told me this story, but when Shukla was a new graduate student, his advisor, our advisor, Jewel Charney, invited him to a party, and he'd already made a plan to go to Montreal for that weekend. And he didn't know what to do. He said, how can I turn down the great professor? And Arthur told him, Shukla, this is America. The professors don't care about that. You can do anything, just don't sleep with their wives. Okay, so that was one clue to the way Shukla learned to operate. And then I thought if I went to his village, maybe I'd understand more, okay? And I went to his village, and I actually understood less, okay? It seemed all the more astonishing that someone could have somehow gotten from that place to MIT and well beyond. And again, you know, there's an astonishing array of talent and some wonderful people, but scientific talent in this room, of all kinds of talents. But I think that there are dimensions of humanity on which just Shukla is unparalleled.
And on this marvelous visit to Shukla's village a number of years ago, and Mike mentioned that waiting when we went from Varanasi to about 2 or 3 miles from his village, there was this array of paladins for the women and elephants for the men. And so the two people who would ride elephants were, I guess, Tim Palmer and myself. Tim, of course, rushed out and jumped on an elephant about that tall. And the only one left was one about the... And if you go to my webpage, there's this animal with a pimple on top. I'm the pimple. And so the way they do these things is guy with a thing, the elephant kneels down, and Shukla's nodding his head, and I held onto this rope, which went under the tail of this animal, and finished up on this piece of sacking behind the driver, or whatever you call him, and jumped up, and off we went to Shukla's village. And it was a view I've never had before. And so we arrived in the middle of Shukla's village, a big circle of people, wondering what the heck these people were doing on top of elephants and things. And so this guy jabbed again, and the elephant kneeled down. And so I wondered what to do, so I went backwards on this rope. And, you know, one has to be careful where one puts one's foot when you're going backwards on an elephant. And I guess I put my foot in the wrong stirrup, so to speak. And this elephant jumped up, and I did somersaults and landed in a ditch, which is fortunately dry. And I'll never forget the number of villagers looking at me, wondering what the hell this guy was doing in this ditch. So I think I was set up by Shukla. So I will forgive you, because I do remember one tiny other story. We before heard about Shukla and his field experiments, and Shukla and I were in the Bay of Bengal experiment. Would you believe, flying out of the Dum Dum airport in Calcutta, and we finally had a monsoon depression to fly into. And this was great, because this is one of the great things that we wanted to do with the Bay of Bengal experiment. Flew into this thing, and the rings of convection, and we took all these measurements. And the next day, it was spun up much stronger, but the convection had decreased. So Shukla there, and walking up and down the plane, said, clearly it's a vertical advection of vorticity downwards. And I said, well, that's an interesting idea. And so the next day, we flew out, and this thing was spinning up, and there was less cloud. He said, clearly vertical advection of vorticity upwards. And then we decided that the next day would be the big choice of what would happen, because it was going over Bangladesh. And in those days, because we were sort of Americans mainly, there was great suspicion about taking measurements close. We had a soldier with a rifle in the plane to make sure that we didn't take data as we flew over the estuaries and so on. I'm not quite sure what he would have done if we had taken data. Probably would have shot us. But we had permission to go over Bangladesh. The trouble is, we had to land in Dhaka and change the Indian soldier into a Bangladeshi soldier and fly around and then do the same thing back again. And when we added up all the thing, it was about $200,000. So, Shukla, we never found out it was vertically upward vorticity advection or downward, but I'm always amazed at your on-the-feet analysis that you did.
It's been patient.
Thank you, Jim. As I was sitting here, I originally had 3 thoughts that I wanted to share with everybody. And as I kept hearing everything that everyone was saying, many, many other thoughts come to my mind. But I'll try to keep it to just 3. Of course, the most important impression I have is the 7 years I spent with Shukla, from the time I negotiated an agreement with him to come to Goddard, and all the terms and conditions he made me adhere to at a place called the Fireside Inn on Greenbelt Road. He wanted his own office and his own secretary. He didn't want to share it with me. He wanted sole control over the climate program. And as I think of those days, those 7 years, the word climate predictability sticks out in my mind. It was a time when very few people actually believed in it. I mean, we're talking here today about trying to convince the community that climate models can predict climate change and everything else. In those days, Shukla was one of the first people that I knew that used to draw this picture on climate predictability, the uncertainty, and I think of the work that he was doing with Jerry Namias's sea surface temperatures in the Pacific and how it would affect everything. We spent those 7 years together, and I guess that influence at NASA eventually led to him deciding that he had to be his own master of his fate, and that's when he decided he would form his own institute, the Kohler Institute. And of course, he took many of our people from that center. But it was also at Jim Kinter is one. There were many others. The second thing that's very interesting, and I think everybody shares this with me, is we're all here bathing in the sunlight of Shukla's work, his accomplishments, and his relationships to everybody. And when I see people that I've barely had contact with 50 years ago, like Leonard come, and so many others, Carlos Nobre, the student that Shawnee and Shukla brought to Goddard, and Inez Fung is a postdoc. I can't help think that. But I want to share one thing with you that is an article I read in the paper about a book that David Brooks recently published. And the point of his book is there are 2 things that really characterize people: their resumes and and their eulogy. Today, Jim Kinter was listing the 250 papers, all the accomplishments, the awards of the Prime Minister of India and everything else. And that appeals to this community. But what are we going to remember him for when we're coming to hear the eulogies? We're going to remember him for the human things that he did, for the people that he brought, for the work that he did in India with the college that he formed, for the non-resume kinds of things that are so important to all of us. And so that's the thing that I treasure from him. The people that he brought, his brother, and all the people he gave an opportunity to, not just at Goddard, but at Cola and at George Mason. So that's my thought.
So for those of you who have read Tom Sawyer, you know it's a rare privilege to hear someone recite your eulogy. Divino.
Well, I think Shukla knows everything that I'm going to mention here, but I'll be glad to say. If I could say in just one word, Shukla is really a superb human being. You know, and I know him for 44 years. He came to MIT. I had to come a few months before because I didn't speak English at all. I still don't, but I'm still trying to learn. And then Philip say, except you have a good curriculum, but you don't know English, you go to Boston University for 3 months, take an intensive course. That was in May. Then Shukla came around August, September, I don't know. And the first impression I got Shukla saying, talking to him, I said, what are you doing here? You have a PhD already. I come for a PhD, you have it. I said, this guy must be crazy. What's going on? And he said, no, I want to study metrology. That's it. And I remember he came from a meeting, an NWP meeting, I think in Tokyo, where you met Charney, all these people, and you got impressed and came. And we developed a very good relationship, professional and as a friendship for the last 44 years. I visited him when he was at University of Maryland and spent a few months there with him, doing some work on things of my heart. Was a drought prediction for the Northeast Brazil, where you have huge percentage of the population suffering from recurrent droughts. And then Shukla was at Goddard Space Flight Center, in Greenbelt. And I came and I did a postdoctoral work with him, and we published a paper, which I think was kind of a seminal paper in prediction for the Northeast Brazil, doing some simulations, some analytical studies, some observational study, etc. And in 1980, I think it was in January or February, as Shukla used to say in the beginning, we had a workshop in Brazil in INPE, São José dos Campos, exactly on the question of the droughts. And Shukla came, and John Rhodes and other people came, and it was a nice 1 week thinking about what you could do about prediction of the Northeast drought. We've been associated in many occasions, and Shukla said, I'm going to do something at ICTP, why don't you come and let's work together? And then I spent a few months there, I think 6 months or so at ICTP in Trieste. It was cold, very cold place there in Trieste. And we did something together and this and that. And I think it was in 1981, he encouraged me to go to a meeting in India, in New Delhi. And I had to stay, there was something, I came to the custom, the guy said, quarantine! What the hell, what am I going to do? So they sent me to a hotel, it was like a hospital, whatever, and I have to stay there for 6 days. I said, why is that? This yellow fever certificate is not valid. It takes 10 days, you have only 4 days. And I remember Shukla came on visiting me, and it was funny because the people told me, you might have the disease, and we have the mosquitoes here, but you don't have the disease. So, and they took me from the airport to this hospital, full of mosquitoes around. On this scooter. So what the hell is going on? But anyway, I have to go, and Shukla tried to manage for me to go out. Called P.K. Das was the head of the Met department, and I came. So no, even the prime minister got into this situation, but he said to himself, no, I cannot go against the law. So he was in the hospital himself. So I have to stay there 6 days in the hospital. Well, and then it was nice because we spent more time. We went to Taj Mahal and saw the other things there. And Shukla came many times to Brazil. When my son finished school, he came to occasion. Recently, Shukla was again in Brazil. And we have been associated to many things. And the Brazilian meteorologists owe to Shukla a lot. And Carlos mentioned a few here. And certainly even CPTEC was called CPTEC Cola model because it was important to start the beginning of the whole enterprise that Carl was running in Cachoeira Paulista. So there was, and many students, Shukla was his advisor. Paulo Nobre, Carlos' brother, did his PhD with Shukla, and Clemente, many others came and worked. So there is a ramification of Shukla all over Brazil in terms of meteorology. So we owe you a lot. And Shukla, for me, is like a brother, probably a brother that Buddha gave to me. So I thank you very much, and you are very dear to my heart. And Shukla is a brother to me. Thank you.
Ramdas. So we're very close to the end of the time we have. We have 2 more. So please.
Hello, my name is Ramdas Singh. I am Dr. Shukla's former student. And first, I would like to say hi to all of you. And can you please say hi? I am not going to talk about Dr. Shukla, but I have something to talk about. My talk starts with a question. Do you believe in God? The obvious answer is no. Obvious answer is yes. We do believe in God. My second question is, have you seen the God? The obvious answer is no, I have not seen the God. But today, I would like to prove in front of all of you that there is God. I would like to prove that. Around 1980, I was trying to come to USA to study. I couldn't speak English even a single sentence. My classmates told me, Ramdas, if you cannot speak a single sentence in English, how can you dream of going to the United States to study? Then I told them, if I don't try something, then obviously I am failed. But if I try something, maybe I will succeed. Then I kept on trying, looking for if someone can help me. Then I met an entity, and he told me that, go ahead and you try and apply for study in the United States. And I applied. After so many struggles, I managed to come to the United States to study. But it was not Dr. Shukla. It was God in the form of Dr. Shukla who helped me to come here. So if you have met Shukla, you have not met a human being. You have met a God. One more thing I want to mention. I want to thank Dr. David Strauss. He helped me to write my thesis on monthly mean and seasonal mean predictability. I want to thank him once again. Thank you so much, Jim Kinter.
Thank you, Ramdas.
Thank you, Dr. David.
Okay, I lied. We have 2 more. Go ahead.
I wasn't sure whether I was going to say anything, but the gentleman just a few minutes ago mentioned the Scientific Advisory Committee from the Department of Earth Sciences in India, and expressed the idea that maybe it wasn't going quite as well as it might be. And I feel I have to actually do a bit of public contrition, because I feel I'm largely responsible for this unfortunate situation. And so I thought maybe my contribution will be to... So Shukla convened the panel and asked me to come over. And I remember the very first day we were met in the department by the permanent secretary, I think it was. And he explained that predicting the monsoon was really one of the most important problems for India. It was so important for agriculture, and unfortunately this was a very difficult problem, he explained, and sometimes the forecasts weren't quite as good as they might be. And there was a kind of a slight pause at this stage, and I thought to myself, well, you know, I've been brought over here at great expense, I should maybe make some contribution. So we've had talks about ensemble forecasting, so I thought I had this great idea suddenly. So I said to the secretary, maybe one idea you could think about is when the ensembles diverge a lot from each other, it's telling you that, you know, that year is going to be very difficult to make a prediction. So maybe why not just not make a prediction at all, have no prediction that year? I thought this was a great, you know, I thought, this is it, I've paid for my money, I can feel good. But this guy, instead of answering me, he just looked at Shukla and just stared at him for about what seemed like an eternity. And I suddenly realized that whilst a lot of Indian culture is quite impenetrable, I suddenly realized what this stare meant. It meant, Shukla, you chose this scientific committee. Where did you get this bozo from? So after that, I shut up, and but unfortunately, I don't think the committee ever quite recovered. So my apologies for that early intervention. I won't do it again.
I'm Nora Charney, and I've known Shukla for a very long time, mainly through my father. And I just wanted to say a few words about how kind and generous he's been to my family and me. And I wrote some things down, but I can't remember them. I know that my father loved him very much and respected his work, and that Shukla was very important to our family, especially when my father was ill. And he told wonderful stories that kept the spirits up. And I'm really grateful, and I'm glad to be here to honor him as a friend and as a scientist. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure there are others who perhaps would like to say something, but we are very much at the end of the time we had for this evening. Now, normally when there's an event where lots of people say things, you might call it a roast, where they say things that sometimes are unkind. We haven't heard that tonight, but typically we give that individual an opportunity to rebut any of the comments that happen. Now that's normally only if the individual is a human, and in this case Shukla is a god, so I'm not sure if we should give him a shot at this, because, you know, we may all be converted to some new religion if we give him a chance. But anyway, Shukla, I'll give you an opportunity if
Already during the daytime, I was thinking, why these people are so nice to me? And now, after this evening, I don't know, but it really has been a wonderful day listening to really stimulating lectures by very distinguished scientists from the world. Having dinner with family members. I have all my wife, children, brothers, sister-in-laws, and friends, and so many people that I worked with, right from IITM in Pune to Goddard Space Flight Center. We already heard University of Maryland, George Mason University. I see a lot of students here. I see a lot of colleagues. And I think that it's just unbelievable. Many of you have traveled so far. I really want to thank you. So many of you have crossed Atlantic. Thank you. I mean, I can start saying names, but then I have to take name of everybody. So I decided no. I'll just cover categories. Many of you have crossed equator to come here. Some of you have crossed Amazon rainforest to come here. But there's only one person I really want to mention who has really come all the way from India. And that's my younger brother, Sriram Shukla. Can you get up, please? Now, why am I mentioning this? Because I really feel that it's not I really who deserves the credit for Gandhi College. It's he who deserves the credit for Gandhi College. He runs the college. He is the one who was in America, and he went back to the village. Me and Wallace and Suji, we go there and visit. And once I stay in the village for 5 days, I'm heading to an air-conditioned hotel in Varanasi. I'm telling you honestly. He lives in the village. Anyway, thank you very much. He has done that. And by the way, while right next to him is another Shukla, who is really next to my village. He's from another village. And he has actually played a great role. He's now a professor in the Duke University. And he was a very senior IAS officer. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to make sure that I give a special thanks to all my family. I mean, family is the most important unit, I think, built in that book. You must have read that. And I think that I was going to thank that Nora came, but Nora, thank you very much. I was just going to introduce you. This is so amazing that Charni, our mentor, is our hero, and we're so glad to have Nora with us this evening. We have, of course, when I introduce my family and my brothers, I have to immediately introduce Jim Kinter. His last name is not Shukla, but he's sort of very close to the big brother. And I mean, he worked for 33, 34 years. We have worked together. There's only one Jim Kinter. And all of you guys who are trying to hire him, please don't try. He's not going anywhere. So anyway, this is really formally, I really must thank Jim, Tom, and Stacy for doing all these arrangements, and Ann took care of all the invitations. Okay. So I'm really grateful to all of you for coming. You are saying nice things to me, and I'm really surprised because all of you have really enriched my life. You have enriched my life intellectually, you have enriched my life socially, and you have really helped me a lot from my journey from the village that you have been hearing till today. And I think that there is a very simple explanation for everything that you were saying, and you are not saying it because you are so nice. So I'm just going to say it. I'm just lucky. It's just good luck, that's all. And I think it is luck. There's nothing else. And how lucky you have to be, and I'll just give you just a few examples, to have your parents who will do anything in the world to make sure that I study. It doesn't matter whether there's a school or there's no college, they will send it. They will, if not in the village, go to the next village. If there are no books, go and buy the books. They will just study. I think how lucky I am to get married to Anne. And we have this wonderful family. There's these things you cannot do. Family is a very important sort of unit in whatever we are doing. I think that I'm professionally speaking, look how lucky I am that India government sends me to Japan. Totally surprising. I was from a village. I didn't know. I was not supposed to be chosen. Somehow, for some reason, I got chosen. And I met Charney there. And then I ended up at MIT. I come to MIT. Who are my 4 advisors? Charney, Phillips, Lorenz, and Manabe. I mean, how, those of you who are in climate area will know what these names mean. How lucky you have to be to be that. And there at MIT, I met so many friends, and many of them are here. So wonderful to have. I have my roommates from MIT who are here. My Tinpati friends. Everybody's here. And so many of you who become friends of Gandhi College, you're all here. From MIT, I came to Goddard. It was pure luck. I know Milt is not happy I left Goddard, but let me tell you, Milt and Dave Atlas and Eugenia, I mean, they become like family. They just did everything. I mean, I still remember a picture. We were on a beach, and Anne told me we were trying to sort of go in the water, and I said, Shukla, you and Halem on this one single sort of in the water, boys, you guys look like brothers. So I told Dave Atlas by you last week, he's sorry he could not come here. I think that then cola. I mean, again, imagine, there's no other explanation. It is good luck to meet such wonderful people who decide to be your colleagues and remain your colleagues. They never leave. No, I'm just kidding. I think that, and I have to really give shout out to Dave Strauss. I don't know whether he's here. I mean, he had a federal job, and the guy resigns his job, and to take a soft money job with cola. And so we had that kind of bond. I had a tenure professorship. Most of the people thought I was crazy to resign a tenure professorship to go for a non-profit soft money job. And nobody knew the story that Jan said, yes, I have to mortgage the house one day because we're all ready to go. And when we went to the bank, the guy said, who are you? Then NSF lady who never dealt with it said, oh, we're going to give you a grant. But who are you? Where is your line of credit? I said, what is that? I didn't know. And then on the spot, we had to mortgage. Anyway, I think that then we came to George Mason. And again, I have to say, somebody like Peter Stearns with you. Thank you very much, Peter, for coming. We're fortunate to have somebody like that. Montek Singh Ahluwalia that you just heard, he gave a lecture. It was a pure luck that when I was asked to meet the Prime Minister, he was there in that room. And that's how I remember we had met many years ago. And I think he was quite encouraging. He also told me that, I think he almost told me that nobody talks to Prime Minister like that because I just told the Prime Minister, you have a terrible weather service. You have a terrible weather department. And if you really want to be a leader and bring the agriculture and so on, then you have to really improve the weather service. And I knew that I'll be kicked out of that meeting in a few minutes. But what really happened, this some credit goes to Dr. Manmohan Singh. As the meeting broke, you remember, he says, Dr. Shukla, can I have your card? And I said, oh my God, that's one time I don't have a card. And then I said, sir, no, you don't need my card. I will come and see you. He said, you come to India, you come and see me. And definitely I went to India, thanks to Montek. So every time I go to India, any questions I have, any problems I have, these are the two people in government, if anything I have, Delhi, Montek helps me. In UP, which is another state, GP Shukla helps me. So there I have people who really help me and things get done. That's really, I want to really thank everybody here. So I really think that there is really a good luck in life. And again, I say, I consider it great luck that I have met all of you. You are all here. I'm really having a wonderful time. And I would like to speak just a couple of minutes about the future. Now, I heard one comedian telling another comedian on television that after you are 60 or 65 or 70, you should not do two things. You should not talk about long-term plans. And I thought it was a pretty good suggestion. Of course, you already heard what Doug Hughes did, right? He landed his gyrocopter in the US Capitol. He's past 60, so he doesn't believe that you cannot do new things in this. And, honestly, I don't agree with that either. I agree with Duke Hughes. I think that to be 70 and to have adequate funds in your retirement account so that you don't have to worry about food, I really think that it gives you the privilege of trying things that you are not afraid to fail. As a matter of fact, you can try things even if the failure is guaranteed, because you are doing it for the fun of it. And I'm sort of saying that because my own personal interest, which started with climate, basically evolved into climate and poverty. And now it has actually evolved further into inequality of opportunity. And especially, and this may sound crazy to you, especially into the non-violent civil disobedience as one of the tools to address the problem of inequality of opportunity. This is something that's why I consider Doug Hughes a hero, not a crazy postal man, what he did 2 weeks ago, okay? So why I'm saying that? Just to let you know that you are not done with me. And I'm not done with you. Thank you all for coming. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
So that completes our evening's entertainment. And I must say, now I understand why I had to sign that purchase order for a gyrocopter. But I did want to end the evening by saying thank you once again to everyone for coming. I hope you all had a good time. I hope you all enjoyed the meal. And now those of you who are going to be with us for Symposium tomorrow, you really do have to go and finish those talks that you're going to give tomorrow. And the rest of you, of course, have to check your email. Yes, Tom has received none of the talks for tomorrow, so we really do need to get those sometime before your slot on the agenda. So thank you all, and good night, everybody.